My name is Peter, recovered alcoholic. Grateful to be alive and sober, part of a sacred place called Alcoholics Anonymous, and thank the group again for having me the last 3 months. Thank Jim for reaching out to me. And what's that?
Said thank you for being here.
Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome. And it's been a blast. You guys were wonderful. So I really appreciate the hospitality and the handshakes and all of that, and taking good care of Marion and getting her a seat over there every week. Thank you for that. So Marion's a little under the weather tonight, so I'm solo. But a lot of work has been done. You guys participated and did the walk with me. Whatever God gave me over the last 11 weeks and my experience, strength, and hope with not only the steps, but my experiences around that, walking in here and what it was like before I got here. And it's been a hell of a ride for me, I will tell you that. God willing, June will be 38 years, and I still sometimes are wondering how I stuck around this long. Even when I got here with a lot of desperation, I have that voice in the head saying, who are you kidding? It's just a matter of time. You're going to screw this up like anything else you've ever touched in your life just blew up in front of you, whether I was involved with it or not. And this was so important to me, as it is right now tonight. And thank the good Lord, he has kept me above ground, sucking air, and sober, and I'm very grateful for that. I've shared so many times from these podiums. The older I'm getting and the longer I'm sober, my point of view has changed on many, many things, on most things, quite frankly. And grateful for things now that perhaps I wouldn't be grateful for when I got here, when I was a me seeker. It was about me, my comfort, my stuff, try to fix the results of my alcoholism rather than the causes of my alcoholism, patch up a lot of holes and get stuff. And where I am now, I mean, I like nice things. I'll be the first one online to tell you. I like nice things. I like traveling nice. I'm really grateful for the many things God has taken from me. And those are the illusions about the things that I think are going to make me happy. What do I need to achieve in AA? I know a lot of people where their home group is the podium, and I never want to be one of those folks. I hope the last 12 weeks wasn't a floor show, but more of a walk through this work. And I'm grateful that God has removed a lot of those things from me. They sneak up once in a while and they bite, but they don't hold on too long. And I'm grateful that God has awakened me to that dark side of the soul. And that is simply the part of me that doesn't know God and wants to kind of operate still in this 66-year-old, 38-year sober body. And it doesn't fly anymore. It comes a point on this journey where we awaken enough where we pay attention to that voice that tells you, what are you doing? Why are you saying things like that? Why are you looking this way? And it's a good gauge to keep me in the saddle. That didn't happen for me just getting to meetings and not picking up a drink. I was dry, sober, you might say. My UA would be clean. But after that, I had a lot of the old voices still talking to me. And as I've shared before, when I got to Alcoholics Anonymous in 1988 sober, I still wore the street all over me. I sounded like the street. I looked like the street. I viewed people like I did in the street. I try to be respectful, but you would take it as even disrespectful. I only knew the street. I was out there for so long. So I bring that in here and going from meeting to meeting, doing the 3-a-days, running with a bunch of road dogs from meeting to meeting to meeting, drinking way too much coffee. They were smoking too many cigarettes, living in the rooms of AA. It didn't shake that. Nor did it shake the voices in the head that would keep me up at night. What did was getting aligned, in line, getting right, getting immersed, becoming one with this power called God via the 12 steps from the treasure map called the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous. Something happened in there. I take no credit for it, but this spirit began to awaken and give me something to see beyond what my eyes see and beyond what my eyes hear. In fact, I was no longer seeing with the mind or hearing from the mind, even speaking from that place on most days. Start to operate out of the soul. The connection was made. And when we talk about growing and understanding and effectiveness, it's enhancing this experience. And what taught you just to sit in a meeting and listening to, don't leave till the miracle happens. Here's the good news for any white chippers in here or new people. If you're sitting here sober, the miracle has happened. It's not going to knock on the door and say, here's another miracle now that you're here. It's happened. And what I need to do is fan the flames, enrich that, enhance it. And I could hang around a lot of meetings. I'm giving you my own experience because my first 6 months in here, I was Looney Tunes. I can hang around a lot of meetings and just sit there. And I'll hear something that will inspire me, but between the seat and the parking lot, I lose it. Between city, there's Pat does this big book thing every year, and I never been there. I heard it's fabulous, but I know there's going to be a lot of folks going to get all lathered up between Thursday and Sunday, and by Tuesday or Wednesday, right back to the same flatlining again. Yeah, because I'm looking to get inspired for me to inspire me, and the needed power wasn't there. What I need to do out of desperation is call on God. I'm willing to do anything. And anything is none of my business. I'm just willing to get in the batter's box. Wherever you take me, I'm going, because it's got to be better what I'm doing, even in sobriety. Because I did flatline right in Alcoholics Anonymous with 3 meetings a day under my belt. I know everybody in the room. I know where the coffee pot is. I know who the greeters are. I know where the literature rack is. I got some little AA sound bites that are coming out of my mouth. But when I put my head on the pillow, I toss and turn all night. Got a lot of unspiritual things going on in my head. And the only thing that was going to silence that was God. What I come to find out is not only God, but putting this stuff into practice. Now, in Comes of Age, it's a fabulous book. If you haven't opened it up, I would suggest you do. But in Comes of Age, somewhere in it says something like this. That the basic service, we have a lot of service commitments in AA, from making coffee to doing what he's doing or opening up the meeting to a lot of service level jobs. But the basic service it tells us we do in Alcoholics Anonymous is one drunk working with another. It's called sponsorship. And that word sponsor is like you basically vouch for somebody coming in. I have a guy, he's really desperate. I'm going to bring him in. He's my or she's my responsibility. That's where the word came from, because it doesn't appear in the book. Now, on that, there's some folks I've heard over the years, well, you don't need a sponsor because the word sponsor is not mentioned in the big book. And I say, good luck. We need a teacher. We need somebody who are accountable. At least I did, and I still do. Since I'm 6 months sober, I've never gone without a sponsor. I just won't do that. Because then I'm a hypocrite. And how can I possibly get up here and talk to you about what I'm doing when I'm MIA with the sponsor? And I don't trust this mind to lead me. So I need somebody to even have a conversation with about my day, to maybe revisit the steps, or sometimes there's things going on. I need an objective voice, someone I can trust. And so I've never been without a sponsor. But it is something really important, because I can't keep it unless I give it away. And it's not even, there's 12-step calls and taking folks to meetings, and those are all wonderful things, important things. But a sponsor is a very specific relationship. It's he or she, guys with the guys, girls with the girls. Someone is my go-to that I trust, even with my innermost self, even the icky things, that they're not going to stand in judgment of me. And that's hard to do when you're new. Who do I pick? Well, pick somebody. You could always leave and find some. It's not a marriage. I remember the first time I asked my first sponsor, I thought I was going to propose, like I was all nervous. Would you marry me? I mean, be my sponsor, that kind of thing. Yeah, people are looking to sponsor people. And if you're not getting what the program talks about, you thank them for their time and you find someone else. But the way I'm going to find a sponsor is by going to meetings and listening and watching who's doing what. You know, if I'm new and there's a guy who sounds really profound up here and I go in the parking lot and he's around the newcomers and they're all female, I don't want him as a sponsor. If he's going to strip clubs and gambling joints, I don't want him as a sponsor. I'm not the arbiter on anyone's sex conduct. I need somebody who's all in. And when I talk to them, they're coming from a place that perhaps I never heard before. Very deep spiritual place. And they're having fun doing it. Now I'm getting closer. I'd like to, when I take someone on that I don't know, usually it's doing a first step exercise, but I like to talk to them. Our book talks about get an idea of their religious background. Are they religious or not? Do they have a religion? Where are they with that? Where are they with God? You know, how many times have they tried to get sober? Have they ever had a sponsor? Have they tried Alcoholics Anonymous? I want to get a little bio on them, know who I'm talking to, and in the process qualify them. Are they alcoholic or not? They might just be a moderate drinker, a hard drink, and a treatment center said go to AA. They don't even need to be here. They come here, welcome, we'll pour you a cup of coffee. Some are unsure if they're alcoholic or not. Some are pure drug addicts. No one's going to throw you out. I just need to know as a sponsor how to navigate with this. You know, if I'm talking to them about drinking and they had one beer in their life, but they did a whole lot of dope, I need to change that conversation. Or maybe hand them off to someone else. It's that important, this thing called sponsorship. I just want to share with you a couple of things out of our book, how important this is. Way back in the forewords, we have Bill going to Akron, and he meets Dr. Bob, and prior to that, Ebby passed the message on to Bill via the Oxford group. Bill's got about 6 months, goes to Akron, Ohio on a business deal that blows up. Bill wants to drink, wants to stay sober, wants to drink, wants to stay sober, knows he's on thin ice. And he realizes over the last 6 months while he was in New York, he kept passing this message on. They all got drunk when Bill was sober, and he knew that. So he finds Dr. Bob through a series of circumstances, which we can do another time. And what comes out of this, Bill writes this. This seemed to prove that one alcoholic could affect another as no non-alcoholic could. It also indicated that strenuous work, one alky with another, was vital to permanent recovery. That is a huge promise. Permanent recovery. We do it a day at a time. Permanent recovery. If you're in here, you never have to leave. Yeah? If you're sober, you can stay sober. You don't have to hang in. Hang-in days are when I'm untreated. And I'm doing a lot of unspiritual things out there. I'm bouncing back in here with guilt and remorse all over me. I'm hanging in again. Later on, Bill writes this. Each day somewhere in the world, recovery begins when one alcoholic talks to another, sharing experience, strength, and hope. He says this in Doctor's Opinion. He's talking about Bill Wilson. As part of Bill's rehabilitation, he commenced to present his conceptions to other alcoholics, impressing upon them that they must do likewise with still others. They must. So I have this experience, or I'm having this experience as I'm going through the steps. And what I'm supposed to do is give the entire thing away for someone who's willing and desperate enough to follow me. And we'll both make mistakes along the way sometimes. But there's the coolest thing when you get someone when the light in the eyes is off and you got a body in front of you. And then you walk into the meeting and they showed up. They're here, they've been here, but you see them for the first time and it's the eyes are lit up because the soul is starting to awaken. They're here, they're present. Oh my God, they're here. They're alive. The spirit is waking up. The pilot light's been turned on. And all I did was pass on experience, strength, and hope to them. And I have no letters in front of my name. I'm not here to represent some medical fraternity or a treatment center. I'm a drunk who was homeless passing this on. Which really doesn't make sense about Alcoholics Anonymous, that God entrusted his kids with someone who can never make it. A room full of broken toys. He sends us here and we'll get you healthy. We'll get you healed. We'll get you well. We'll pour you a cup of coffee and completely revolutionize your life. That in a year or two from now, you'll be looking back on, oh my God, I remember when. My life is so cool right now. I'm traveling light. I don't know how this happened. All I can think about was drinking and taking other stuff and hurting myself and trashing through life. And suddenly I can't even, run through a red light anymore. I go to a doctor's office and they give you those little clipboards to fill out for 4 years. You're filling out stuff. And they give you a pen, and I put the pen in my breast pocket, and I'm at the elevator going, oh my God, that's not mine. I got to bring it back. And they think a lunacy commission should be appointed for me, but it's not mine. It doesn't belong to me. It's called stealing. That doesn't come from me. It comes to me. So God allows me to transcend a lot of things and live on a plane, a spiritual plane, compared to what I was doing, which was living in hell. In Bill's story, towards the end, he says, for if an alcoholic failed to perfect and enlarge his spiritual life through work and self-sacrifice for others, not for me, it is no longer about me. He cannot survive the certain trials and low spots ahead. So Bill's not theorizing you might have some rough spots. There's certain trials and low spots ahead. If you're new, speak to someone who's 10, 15, 20, 30 years sober. They will all tell you about the low spots that just happened. Life happens. It's in session. Where it to be divorce, bankruptcy, loss of a job, a breakup of a relationship, kids get sick, they get sick. It happens. You know what a book tells us to do? After prayer, go help somebody. Now my mind's going to say, well, that doesn't make any sense. It's about me right now. No, go help somebody. Stay out of your own way and you'll get better. It's unbelievable what can happen to folks like us. I'm being one of them to some degree where we make peace with God. I'm not angry. I might disagree, but I'm not angry. I'm at peace with God, which means for the most part, I'm pretty okay with me. That doesn't mean with all the cracks in the arm, I say, well, that's just me. No. But I'm okay with me. I don't have to be anyone else. And if folks like me, I embrace that, and those who don't, I pray for. I don't character assassinate them. So if I'm right with God, I'm okay with me, which means I'm going to be okay with you. Now I'm traveling light. Very much different than when I walked in here and the weight of the world was on my back, and you can just look at me and see it. Yeah. Most days I'm not afraid. I get afraid. I get frightened. Sometimes 2 o'clock in the morning, oh my God, how many years have I got left? When is something bad gonna, I get that. But I go into my prayer room because I made peace with God to walk me through this dark night. It's gonna happen. And the next morning, I'm on the phone talking to a sponsor of a couple of drunks. What's going on? Let me tell you about my night. I wrote some inventory. And I'm back in the saddle, and you keep chopping wood and carrying water. What Bill says in working with others, which, by the way, working with others, by the time we get to step 12, my experience and what the book says, we've had a spiritual awakening. We've had this personality change sufficient to bring about recovery from alcoholism. We're new. So step 12 isn't about having the experiences. We got it. This is what to do with it. Help others practice principles in all our affairs. What Bill says about working with others is he's a lot more sure here. It's almost concrete. And he says this, practical experience shows that nothing will so much ensure immunity from drinking as intensive work with other alcoholics. That is a mouthful. And that is a powerful statement. Immunity from drinking, the condition is intensive works. That's not a drive, give you a lift to a meeting. That's like, call me, how's it going? Intensive works meaning you and I are going to sit down, open up the book, or whatever we're going to do, and do some step work. And you're going to cry on my shoulder and laugh with me as well. We're going to walk through this together. We both might be exhausted and weary when it's done, but we're both going to be uplifted because of it. Trust me, the sponsor who's sponsoring the guy with one day who's a mess, the sponsor's actually getting more out of it at that moment. You're helping ensure their recovery. Don't let your ego get too big on that statement if you knew. Okay. This is our 12 suggestion. Carry this message to other alcoholics. We can help when no one else can. We can secure their confidence when others fail. I have to remember the new person, like they did with me, was ill. So they might look real shiny and glossy with 90 days. But if we pry that open, it's not too good. We got that. No shame in that. Okay, if you're new, and I don't want to sound like an authority, please, forgive me if it sounds that way, but if you're new and someone who's sober a while, you say, how you doing? How's it going? Or I do that all the time. They did it with me. The first thing that's going to come out of a newcomer's mouth, if you were like me, is I'm good. Everything's good. With 30 days or 40 days or 50 days or 60 days. It's better because we're sober. It's not that good yet. I can tell you, you have fear and resentments and remorse and guilt and all of that going on. That's okay. It's okay to tell someone, I'm doing better, but I'm terrified at night. 11 o'clock at night, my head starts to wake up and talk to me. The mornings, I don't know what I'm going to do. I'm in panic mode. I got to run to a meeting. I'm unemployed. My wife just left me. My husband doesn't want to talk. We can talk about that in here. When you're new, we know that's going on. Be a little transparent. You will heal quicker because I'm as sick as my secrets. So we know we're doing better with 30 days and 60 days. But we don't want to stop there. We need to open up that box and say, okay, here it is, cards face up, at least to one or two people, not the entire room, in a general way to the entire room, but to one person I need to talk to about that stuff. I'm so grateful for the men and the women who were in front of me when I got here. I went to the men for sponsorship, but the women, the best way I can put this, the old timers, they had 15 years. To me, they were like dinosaurs, and how do you get 15 years sober? You know, I'm trying to get to one. But what the women did, they mothered me. Not coddle, they kind of like a woman's touch. They mothered me when I got, because I was vibrating. I didn't know which end was up. In fact, when I got my first apartment, there were two women. One called me out to the parking lot. She opened up a trunk, and one had a little black and white TV for me. Another one gave me a sleeping bag to sleep in because I had no furniture. And they encouraged me. Old timers know how to do that, especially back in the day when we weren't looking at our cell phones during a meeting, you know? And the men, they were great. They were a little firm. You know, back in the day, they were a little bit more firm, a little bit more direct. They weren't too interested in feelings or my issues. They were, you're a drunk, you're sick, we're going to help get you well, you do what I do. And I said, okay, got it. I'm out of tension. There's different flavors of sponsorship. I felt secure. It's not for everyone. I felt secure around the guys with the firm hands who gave me orders. They were direct. My first sponsor had a lot of edges. He was a rough character. He was awake. He was enlightened, but he was no nonsense. I just felt secure around men like that, and that's who I ran with at the beginning. That doesn't work for everyone. I don't need that kind of hand at this phase of my life and my recovery, but back then it was good. A lot of my teachers were like that. And we'll talk about my journey with sponsors. My first one, I was clear I was an alcoholic when I got here. Took 7 treatment centers and a lot of degradation to come to terms that I'm an alcoholic, I'm a hopeless drunk, and I need something more than I know how to do. And by a drunk practicing their 12-step, they brought me my first step as to exactly what I'm up against. I didn't know how deep the roots on alcoholism go. I didn't know alcoholism doesn't come in a bottle of whiskey. I didn't know any of this stuff. So in them carrying the message, they presented me with the first step because their recovery was that important to them. I was a new kid on the block, and they got me. It's to circle up around you. Where are you going after the meeting? How are you getting home? Where are you going tomorrow morning? Here's my number, call me. And then they would take your number if you had a phone, because if you didn't call them, they were calling you. They value that recovery that much. See, my behavior is a reflection of the value I put on my relationship with God and my own recovery. And they had high integrity when it came to new people walking in the room. And I still see that. We do it a little different in certain places, but I still see it. You know, this table is packed every Tuesday night. What are you doing there? You don't belong there. I just no, I watch, you know. Got a whole stable of ladies. I mean, this is great. There was a woman, Teddy, she's passed on, back in the old Park West group in South Brooklyn. I used to go there Tuesdays and Fridays, and it was Teddy's table. And she had all her girls, and you couldn't sit there. And no men were allowed near that table. How'd you get in there? And she had her girls, and she's very protective. And they'd walk in together and leave together. And she sponsored all of them. And one by one, you watch them 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, and so on. That's just a heartbeat of Alcoholics Anonymous. When I came home from Minnesota, I was looking for someone that sounded like the men I met in Minnesota, who were fellowship guys, big book guys, and service guys. And all of them talked about a God of their understanding, and they looked impeccable. You know, even when they were kind of like casual, to me, that was dressed. If you had a hoodie on and clean jeans and white sneakers, oh my God, because I'm wearing my kid brother's clothes. And at this Friday night meeting, everyone was coat and tie. This was impressive and scary at the same time. And when I came back to Brooklyn, I'm praying, Father, please show me a teacher. For me, teacher just resonates deeper for me. It's a warm word. Please show me a teacher. And I would look at, well, no, and no, and no. One night, there was an anniversary, and this guy, his name was Tony. And Tony was about 5'3", and his width was about 5'3". He just rolled right through the meetings. And you knew when he was in the room. And he got up there to speak at an anniversary one night. And something changed in me. The room got quiet. And I don't remember what he said, but I remember feeling different. It was that quiet voice, that God voice that says, go or say. And I went up to him and I asked him, he knew who I was because he knew I was new. He said, what are you doing? I said, I need a sponsor. And he waited for me to ask him. It's called spiritual consent. Now, back in the day when sponsors weren't readily available, old timers say, I'll be your sponsor. And we still do that. That's cool. I don't do that. It doesn't mean it's right or wrong. We waited for spiritual consent. Can you or will you be my sponsor? There's a contract, an oral contract right there. And once he got spiritual consent, he introduced me to a couple of things I had to do. And those were phone calls on certain days. I will give you a 15-minute window, he told me. At the 16th minute, you're not going to get me. I have a life too. So he gave me 3 phone calls, 3 days a week, meet him at a couple of meetings, join his home group, and we opened up this book. Now, this book collected dust. I looked through it a couple of times. I didn't know what it meant. And he opened up the book to the beginning, and I never forget he did this. When you open up a big book, there's a white page like that. And he says, what's on there? Nothing. He says, that's what you know about alcoholism and recovery. And I was sorry I asked him. And then we began, and we did this walk through the steps. And it was the get in the car days, too, because he would say, what are you doing in a couple of hours? It's a Sunday. And I said, I don't know, maybe watching football, whatever. He said, I'll pick you up at 6 o'clock. We're going to the Bronx. There's a meeting up there. Get in the car, have a meeting in the car before the meeting, a meeting in the car after the meeting. Then when we get to the Bronx, he'd tell me, you're speaking. He would do stuff like that. But we had like 3, 4 guys in the car. And we did this regularly. It was wonderful. And little by slowly, I was getting soul food. I was completely unaware that I was getting soul food. I just knew in the morning I wasn't afraid to wake up and face the day. Little by slowly, and as I'm going through the steps, things are changing. And I remember I got my first sponsee, and oh my God, I was so nervous, like I was responsible for their life. I said, how do you sponsor? My sponsor laughed at me. His gift to him, what I gave to you. That's all you have to do. And I started. And it was my pet project. I was going to create this sober giant, and they got drunk on me, and I thought I did something wrong. And I was with that sponsor for about 8 years, and everyone has clay feet in AA, and unfortunately, he stopped doing the things he did. He didn't get drunk, but he was going sideways. And trust was broken a few times, and I'm back on my knees. Father, show me a teacher. God works in funny ways sometimes. I know it sounds terribly cliche, but he does. So there was a gentleman, his name was Mark Houston, greatest teacher I've ever had in my life. And he was out of Texas. And a buddy of mine who's passed on gave me a cassette tape. You got to listen to this guy. And I listened to this cassette tape, and I'm listening to Mark Houston. I'm saying, what an arrogant, pompous so-and-so. I don't like this guy. And I listened to the cassette again. And the second time, I was even more angry. I said, this guy's an arrogant pomp. Who does he think he is with this big book? I listened to it a third time, and I says, I love this man. He's got to sponsor me. And he was in New York for Fellowship of the Spirit. Him and Joe Hawk were doing this workshop. And I approached him. And he said, I've been waiting for you. What's going on? You look wound up tighter than a baseball. I said, Mark, I'm doing everything I'm supposed to do, but I can't get past me. He's your flatline, that's okay, we'll go through the steps again. And I was from a school, you go through the steps once and once only and live 10, 11, and 12. And if you do that and your joy is happy for I'm not here to change you. But I did that and I hit a wall. You're gonna go through the steps again. This was new for me. I had a new experience and I kind of got lit up again. And this guy was a 10 and 11 guy and a men's guy. And it really changed the whole trajectory of my entire life, not just my recovery. Actually, my life and my recovery is the same thing. It just changed my life, how I looked at this book. What I did get into being was a little evangelical, too, for a while in my early years. I was married to mechanics for a while. If you're doing the mechanics wrong, you don't know what you're doing. If you misquoted the book in my home group, I'd talk to you in the parking lot. That's not good. It was a necessary journey. I regret none of it, being married to mechanics and having bulldogs for sponsors. But at some point, the spirit awakens and you find your place. And my job is not to cause a disturbance when I'm doing this. I might, but not intentionally. My job is to, as a book says, the more you disturb the alcohol for the better. When you're sitting with me, I'll challenge you to get you well. And after Mark passed away, I had this guy Gary Brown and Don Pritz help me, and there were other people. And for me, these men were giants in AA. And I couldn't believe I spent a weekend at Gary Brown's house in Indiana. We did a whole bunch of inventory. And he's talking to me. And as he's talking to me, I'm not even listening because I'm sitting next to Gary Brown. How did I get here? I heard nothing because I was in awe of these men. And they was as humble as you could want from somebody. It was just a spirit. There was a gentleman, Mickey Mussett, who sponsored me out of Colorado, and my current sponsor, Bob Bazans. I'm very, very blessed on this journey. I'll tell you what else I'm blessed for. The amount of 12-step calls I was able to do. I was down in Florida, got here January 9, 2011, and I think February made my first 12-step call on a guy who's actually sober now. He lives out in Naples. I saw him not too long ago. I was chairing a meeting. Got about 7 years now. But he was a disaster, and we got him. And we went to this flea bag motel in like Pompano somewhere. I think it was Pompano. And, you've been there too? Okay. And me and 3 other guys, and I went to the front desk and I said, I'm a member of Alcoholics Anonymous. Here's my driver's license so you know who I am. In case they call the cops, I'm registered with the guy at the front. They're not going to find me doing any shenanigans. Because the cops might show up. Who are you? How'd you get here? The front desk took a picture of my license. They know with this crew. And we go up to this room. I told him, you got a guy smoking crack, shooting dope, and drinking, and he might hurt himself. Room 21, whatever. And we go there, and we basically kicked the door down and threw him in the shower. He was a mess. He soiled himself. I'm trying to hose this guy down while he's having crying jags. And my other buddies are checking the room. They're looking in the closets and under the bed, make sure no one else is in there. And we cleaned him up, put him in the car, and took him to somewhere in Fort Lauderdale. I forget which hospital it is. We dropped him off. He was out the next morning. I had a lot of 12-step calls, but they leave the next morning. And many times, like the first one I ever did, I called my sponsor, and the guy was out on the street panhandling the next morning when I was in Brooklyn. I said, "What'd I do wrong?" He said, "Did you stay sober?" I said, "Yeah." He says, "You didn't do anything wrong." Would you be willing to pick him up and even offer him to sponsor the guys? "Yeah, you did a great job." You move on to the next one. And so the 12-step calls were interesting because you don't know what you're walking into most times. If you're going into a motel or a crack house, I'm never going to put myself in danger. And I learned if I have to call the cops, I will call the cops. It's not about being a hero. And I'll never do a 12-step call alone. Get somebody. Somebody's out there who's practicing these principles. Yeah, I'll come with you. And it's the coolest thing because you do a 12-step. I did a 12-step call. Guy got sick. We had to shower him down. It was icky. It was messy. I mean, I don't want to get in the shower and hose a guy down. I don't want to see any of this. And when it was all over, we're going, "Wow, what a great night. When's the next one coming?" Only in Alcoholics Anonymous. And for me, how am I doing on time? Okay. Practicing these principles in all our affairs. I would love to report to you that at 24/7 I do that, but I'd be a liar. But I tell you what, in the morning, I ask God to allow me to carry the vision of His will to my activities. And when I do my nightly review, I don't often have amends to make. Occasionally I do. I haven't balked at my wife, I think, since I met her. My wife's not afraid of me. We have a respect for each other and obvious love. But what a bully for me to start barking at someone who's 5'2", and I tower over her, and I'm not that tall. That's rude. That's crude. That's intimidating. I don't try to manipulate. Fidelity is a working part of my life, thank you God. It wasn't that way when I arrived in Alcoholics Anonymous. There's no such thing as that in my life. It has been that way. I can't even fathom going the other way, looking somewhere else, and perhaps breaking someone's heart. I would never do that. That's all God stuff. I try my best practice principles in all my affairs, not only out there like when I'm in Publix, or that knucklehead like on the way here cut me off a couple of times, or was trying to jump those cones to get into the express lane. I don't chase him down, but I try to be, and I probably fall short. I do my best to be respectful to everyone in an AA meeting. A handshake doesn't cost me anything, and a smile, I'm a little, sometimes to myself, an introverted, been called stuck up and conceited because of that. If you get to know me, I hope you find out something different. I'm close to the vest. If I get to know you, I kind of loosen up a little. But I've learned about respect, and most of the things I'm practicing principles in all my affairs. You know what? My mom and dad taught me when I was 5. I had to be rehabilitated in Alcoholics Anonymous to remember those golden rules. Unlike when I got here, when I was out there, when I despised God, I love my God. I go to His house on Sunday. I go to His house in Holy Week coming up for some of us. I'm there. It's that important to me. And I try to take that message here and out there. And I fall short. It's the human condition. I fall down. Last week we were coming home, we were left here, we were going home, it was a little rainy out, my wife was driving, we went over something right at our exit and blew 2 tires out in one shot, and we hobbled home. Not one of us, didn't you see that? Oh my God, how, we were just, okay, Marion, hold the wheel, we'll get off the exit, and this is how far we can go, and we got it to a service station, we left it there overnight, got repaired, no big deal, boom, move on. I wasn't blaming Florida or people on the road. It was just, okay, something happened, let's fix it. That does not come from me. In closing, I'll say this. I was given a book many years ago. It's not an AA book. It's not conference-approved literature. Forgive me for reading it. I'm not trying to break a tradition. But I came across this little passage, and it stuck with me that I have a plaque in my home. It's that important to me because the author is not talking about Alcoholics Anonymous. But I hope when you hear it, you'll hear us in this. And this is what the author writes. May I become at all times, both now and forever, a protector for those without protection, a guide for those who have lost their way, a ship for those with oceans to cross, a bridge for those with rivers to cross, a sanctuary for those in danger, a lamp for those without light, a place of refuge for those who lack shelter, and a servant to all in need. That's my Alcoholics Anonymous. And I'm so glad I'm a member here. That's all I got. Peace.